I'm making a witch's hat candy bag today. It's a really fun one. I like this one because it's floral, but you could do it any color that you want. And then on the bottom, it cinches up so that it will hold any of the candies that I want to put inside. And then I can gift these to my kids, and they're holiday themed candies, and I can buy whatever kind I want to put in there. I'm not stuck just having to buy the ones with the holiday wrappers. My first step is to cut a strip of fabric on the fold. I do it 4.5 inches deep and 3.5 inches wide, so that then when it's stretched out, it will be 9 inches long by 3.5 inches wide. For cutting the crown, I have it right at the edge of my fabric, right at the corner really. And then I measure out 6 inches from that corner mark. And I mark with a fabric marker 6 inches all the way around. And then when it comes to this end portion, I stop when it's 1.5 inches in, and that's where I'll cut it. So it's all 6 inches out along right here, and then from the edge I measure 1.5 inches in, and then I measure from that point straight down to the corner so that I know where to cut my piece. For the brim of the hat, I'll cut 2 of these. I start with a folded piece of fabric. I cut it on the fold, and I'll make a mark where I'm going to measure from, so that'll be my center mark, and then I measure out from that center mark 3.5 inches, dropping my dots with my fabric marker all the way around until I have the full half circle there. So then I've got my marks for cutting this, and for this inner section, I go from that same dot and I do 3/4 of an inch all the way around, and that'll give me my center hole. And then I just repeat that for the second side. For my long strip, I'll actually flip it over and I'll create a fold that goes in about 1/4 of an inch. I'll repeat that on the opposite side. And then what I'll do is I'll just stitch right along that edge to maintain that fold, because that makes it so that the rope won't get caught on it when I'm putting it in. Now I'll fold the long edges as well, and I'll press those. And now I'll put the 2 folded edges together and I'll press it again. I'll then create a 1/2 inch little tube where my rope will go through. I do that by stitching 1/2 of an inch in from that folded edge. Now I'll take the crown and I'll fold it in half with the right sides together, and I'll pin it at the bottom and then along that edge. And then I'll stitch right along that edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'll press open the seam of the hat so that it's not quite so bulky in one spot. I do it kind of lightly, just using the tip of my iron, because I don't really want to fold on the sides. I just want that seam to be open. Now I'll take my sharp scissors and I'll cut off just the tip of that, because I don't want quite so much bulk at the top of my hat. Now I'll take my hat brims and I'll place them with their right sides facing each other, and I'll pin them together. Now with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, I'll go around that outside edge. Now I'll make my hat brim right side out by pushing it directly through that center hole. I try to press as close to the seam as I can to get it completely right side out. I really like using my chopstick for this because I can put it right into that edge and just make sure that I work that fabric all out in that area. I then go over my brim one more time with my iron so that I can get those edges really crisp. If you wanted it to be really firm, you could actually put some Pellon in this. I don't feel like that's necessary for this kind of a project, but you could. I'll then stitch around the outside of that hat brim by about 1/8 of an inch, really like as close to the edge as I can without actually being on the edge itself. And now I'll turn the crown of my hat right side out as well. I also like to use the chopstick for this. It's just such a good tool. I've used a crochet hook, just anything that's kind of pointy but still blunt enough to not go through the fabric is great. Now I'll set my crown on top of my brim, and I kind of try to stretch it out so that I can see exactly where it's going to fall. And then I make some just gentle marks with a pencil, or a fabric marker you could do as well. And I make them kind of just in from where I think I'm actually going to need them, where the edge is. If you want accuracy, it's just about 1/4 of an inch in from that edge. So then I'll just provide 8 little cuts out to that 1/4 of an inch mark so that I can turn it and have it go up inside the hat. I don't want to go too far, otherwise it'll show, but I want to go far enough that it's able to do that turn. Now I'll place my crown down inside and I'll start to pin it around on the edges. Kind of stretch it out as it goes to make sure that it has enough room for that top. I actually ended up having a little bit too much of the hat top. So what I need to do is make those slices just a little bit deeper. This is the hard part because you need to get the top to perfectly match the bottom and have it stretch out just right. Now, since I'm cut into about 1/4 of an inch, I'll go just a little beyond that and stitch it at 3/8 of an inch. It's a little bit hard because everything's so tiny. I like to start at the back just because that is the least clean looking portion. One of the big things to be careful with is as I go, I need to adjust where this brim is at so that it doesn't pucker. Now I'll take my strip and I kind of open up the base of it and I'll start where the back of the hat is and I'll kind of sandwich that together. Now I want it to go to just below where that previous stitch was. I'll continue to pin around the entire piece, making sure that I get just past where that stitch mark was. Then I'll just stitch around that edge, going through all of the levels, and I'll pull out the pins as I go. Now I'll cut 12 inches worth of twine, and then I'll take a piece of tape, and I wrap it around the end. I want to wrap it around multiple times because I want it to be nice and thick. Now I'll place a safety pin directly through the twine and the tape. The tape keeps it from unraveling the twine, otherwise it would just pull straight through it. And then I'll work this into the side here. The nice thing about the safety pin is it's firm, so I can use it to kind of feed this through. And then gently pull on the fabric. And now I'll take out the safety pin and I'll remove the tape as well. And so now I just grab the 2 ends and I'll put in my knot and then I'll cut off those rough edges there. So now all I need to do is fill this up with the candy of my choice, tighten it up, and I have a lovely little witch's hat treat bag.